إنه ليس مكانا صالحا للعيش بالنسبة للفلسطينيين. إنه ليس غزة بالطبع. الضفة الغربية لم تدمر، لم يقتل عشرات الآلاف من الناس، ولكن ما فعلوه في العامين الماضيين أمر شائن. هناك المئات والمئات من نقاط التفتيش كما لم يحدث من قبل. نحن الشعب المختار، لا مكان لأي شعب آخر بين النهر والبحر وحتى ما وراءهما. إنهم يكرهون العرب بشكل عام والفلسطينيين بشكل خاص، ولكن أين الحكومة؟ في غزة أخذنا 2.3 مليون شخص وضعناهم في قفص وقلنا لنرى إلى متى نستطيع إبقاءهم في قفص دون أي انفجار، وجاء الانفجار بالطبع بعد 18 عاما. الأسبوع الماضي فقط وصفت كيف قتل جندي طفلا في 9 من عمره من مسافة 250 مترا دون أي سبب. أطلق عليه رصاصة واحدة وقتله. الجندي كان واضحا والجندي لم يعتقل. ليس من قبيل الصدفة أنك تأخذ جنودا صغار، معظمهم مغسول الدماغ، معظمهم من الإسرائيليين مغسول الدماغ ليصدقوا أن الفلسطينيين ولدوا للقتل. الفلسطينيون ليسوا بشرا، حيوانات كما يسمونهم. إنهم جميعا يريدون قتلنا.
حين يكون الحديث عن الإعلام الإسرائيلي فإنه في أغلبه إعلام مجند لخدمة السرديات الإسرائيلية وتسويغ كل ما تفعله إسرائيل بحق الفلسطينيين، بل وإخفاء حقائق الانتهاكات ضدهم عن جمهوره. فهو إعلام سواء أكان رسمياً أم خاصاً يصور السلطة التي ينتمي إليها على أنها الضحية المحاطة بالأعداء، في حين يصور الضحية الحقيقية على أنها الجاني والمخرب والإرهابي الذي يجوز قتله ويجوز كل انتهاك لإنسانيته بذريعة الدفاع عن النفس. إلا أن الأمر لا يخلو من صوت الضمير في لجة كل هذا الإعلام، وصوت الضمير هنا من جنسيته لكن ليس من جنسه، فهو صوت شق طريقه نحو توثيق الحقيقة في صحيفة فتحت له صفحاتها منذ أكثر من 40 عاماً كي ينقل للقارئ الإسرائيلي ما يخفيه إعلامه الآخر عنه من ظلم واقع على الفلسطيني. غدعون ليفي الذي جال في كل أنحاء الضفة وغزة دون كلل، راصداً كل تفاصيل الحياة اليومية للفلسطيني، الحياة التي عسكرتها القوة التي تقر القوانين الدولية وتعترف القرارات الأممية بأنها قوة احتلال. أهلا بكم في 50 دقيقة. غدعون ليفي لا يكتب فقط في هآرتس بعينيه الراصدتين للحدث كما هو من دون رتوش ولا تعديل، لكن صار اللسان الذي تخطى مساحة الصحيفة يسافر إلى الخارج مدافعاً عن حق، إذ يرى في الدفاع حقاً عليه، وكأنه يعتذر عما لم يفعله ولم تقترفه يده. أرحب بضيفي من تل أبيب الكاتب الصحفي غدعون ليفي. أستاذ غدعون، أهلا بك معنا في 50 دقيقة. على عكس غالبية الصحفيين الإسرائيليين المجندين طبعا لخدمة السرديات الإسرائيلية وتسويغ ما تفعل إسرائيل بحق الفلسطينيين، حضرتك أستاذ غدعون سبحت عكس هذا التيار وقررت أن تذهب باتجاه توثيق ما يتعرض له الفلسطيني من قبل يعني سواء الجيش أو قوانين الحكومات الإسرائيلية. لماذا؟
It's a long story because it's a very long career. I started it almost 40 years ago when I realized that the biggest story, the biggest drama of Israel is the occupation, and there is almost no one to document it. And a long time ago, back in the late 80s, I decided to dedicate my political career, my journalistic career, decided to dedicate it to covering the crimes of the occupation. It's more about us than about the Palestinians, by the way. I am trying to tell the Israelis what we are doing, what is being done on our behalf, what is our moral profile. And throughout the years, 40 years almost, it went through all kinds of ways. It changed a lot my political views. I separated myself from Zionism, all because I saw what Israel is doing in the West Bank and Gaza to the occupied, oppressed people. And here I am.
عادة تكون في حادثة معينة هي التي تغير القناعات، تغير الرأي. أنت عندما أخذت هذا الطريق في حادثة معينة هي التي غيرت لك مفاهيمك، غيرت لك قناعاتك؟
No, it is a process, and it's an ongoing process even today. It's not one day I saw the light, or shall I say the darkness. No, I started to travel to the occupied territories. It started with some uprooted olive trees back in the late 80s of an old lady next to Nablus. And then a few weeks later, there was another crime and another crime. And then slowly, first of all, the crimes became worse and worse, as we know. And secondly, my devotion became stronger and stronger because I really realized that this defines Israel. The occupation defines Israel. I mean, Israel can look very nice, democratic, bright, very modern to the world, but in the dark backyard, there is a very dark reality, and I try to be there.
طب أستاذ غدعون، هل هذا أنه الشخص الذي هو مثلك يقع في صدام بين الهوية الشخصية والانتماء وبين الدفاع عن شعب مظلوم هو في نظر الإعلام الإسرائيلي عدو قاتل؟
No, I'm not sure. I think that I don't want to use big words, but finally I try to stand with what is perceived by me is justice, equality, democracy, freedom, rights, human rights. It's not a national question. It's more of a moral question. Yes, my heart goes with the oppressed one, but for a moment I didn't stop being an Israeli. I am not Palestinian. I will never be. I am an Israeli, many times a very ashamed Israeli, many times an Israeli with a lot of guilt feelings toward the Palestinians, but always an Israeli, and I will never change it. I will also never leave Israel.
طيب، هذا الأسلوب اللي اتخذته توثيق ما يتعرض له الشعب الفلسطيني سبب لك عداء، كراهية مثلا في صفوف الإسرائيليين، وعلى فكرة حتى ربما في صفوف السياسيين الإسرائيليين والوزراء والحكومات.
Sure, I mean, it's not always very pleasant. There are better times and worse times. In the Israeli attack over Gaza in 2014, I even needed bodyguards. Now things are more peaceful for me. But sure, it has a price. It has a price in many ways, social, even in the family, in other ways. But finally, one thing must be mentioned. I gain total freedom to express my views, mainly because I'm privileged to be Jewish, and the Jews are privileged in this country. And as long as I am Jewish and working for a quite highly respected platform like Haaretz, I feel that I still gain full freedom. I don't take it for granted. It might change, maybe even very soon. If this government will continue, for sure it will change. But I gain full freedom, support from my newspaper, support from some of my friends. I'm not a victim. I really am not a victim. I cannot say that injustice happened to me. I am not the victim. The Palestinians are the victims, not me.
يعني أنا كنت بدي أسأل عن جريدة هآرتس اللي وجدت فيها منبرك الخاص تكتب فيه. طيب هذه الصحيفة بحد ذاتها أيضا لماذا اتخذت هذا الطريق وفتحت صفحاتها لتكتب ما لها وما يعني ما للإسرائيليين وما على الإسرائيليين، توثق ما يتعرض له الفلسطينيون، الأمر الذي جعل من هذه الصحيفة أيضا مغضوب عليها حتى كانت هناك دعوات من حكومة نتنياهو لمقاطعتها. لماذا جريدة هآرتس اتخذت هذا الطريق؟
Haaretz has a very, very special DNA which goes now over generations and decades. It's over 100 years old. And this DNA is kept by the generations. And it's a DNA of freedom of speech, of liberalism, of openness. Haaretz also basically supports most of my views, even though Haaretz defines itself as a Zionist newspaper, which I don't define myself. But Haaretz is liberal enough to leave space to opinions which are not exactly the line of the newspaper. But finally, I feel very, very comfortable in Haaretz. And Haaretz is really a lighthouse in the darkness of Israeli media. All the rest is really in one of its most shameful times right now. While in the war in Gaza, they hardly showed Gaza, nothing. The Israelis didn't see Gaza, didn't see the suffering of Gaza at all. Haaretz did show it, not all the outlets, almost all of them. But in any case, Haaretz is my home, and I'm very grateful for it. I guess it's part of the way of thinking of the publishers and the over 40 years with Haaretz. And they never stopped me.
بس أستاذ غدعون، أنا لاحظت أنه هآرتس مثلا بنسختها الإنجليزية محبذة، يعني سواء لدى القارئ العربي اللي يقرأ بالإنجليزية أو لدى جمهور الغرب. وأيضا نلاحظ أنه في كثير من الإعلام العربي يأخذ ترجمة، يعني يترجم من النسخة حتى العبرية إلى العربية. هل هذا أيضا يعتبر يعني بالنسبة إليكم إنجاز أنه تتخطى الجمهور الإسرائيلي وتصبح وسيلة موثوق بها سواء لدى القارئ العربي أو الغربي؟
No doubt. I mean, for me, the fact that ours is translated is crucial because in many ways, most of the Israelis don't want to hear those things, don't want to read those things. Part of them do, obviously, and they are reading Haaretz. But the fact that Haaretz speaks to the world and not only to Israelis is for me a big source of hope, because I'm one of those who believe that Israelis will not change by themselves. They need the intervention of the international community, and I have a way to speak or to express my views to the international community. But there are not many differences, if you refer to this, between the Hebrew version and the English version. It's not like Haaretz speaks in one language in Hebrew and in another language in English. By all means not. It's more or less the same content. What I write in English, I write in Hebrew, and they are both published on the same day, very precisely, and I'm happy about both.
طيب، باعتبار أنه منذ 40 سنة تغطي أخبار الضفة الغربية، سأحاول أنه نخصص جزء مهم في هذه المقابلة عن الضفة الغربية، ومن المهم أن نشرح للمشاهد العربي والمشاهد غير العربي ما يحدث في الضفة. بداية، هل الضفة الغربية مشروع ضم تدريجي لدى كل الحكومات الإسرائيلية؟
No doubt. I mean, the 2 years of the war in Gaza were a great opportunity for the settlers and for the government and for the army to change totally the West Bank. From week to week, I don't recognize it. I'm at least once a week in the West Bank, and from week to week, I see the differences. Those 2 years are crucial, and in many ways, those changes are irreversible. And therefore, we should really pay attention to it, because they took advantage of the fact that the whole attention was over Gaza, and under this, they did those unbelievable changes in the West Bank, which turned it upside down. I mean, I don't even know how do the Palestinians continue to live there? How can they live there? I wrote just a few days ago a piece under the title, "It's not a livable place for Palestinians." It's not Gaza, obviously. I mean, the West Bank is not destroyed. People are not killed by tens of thousands. But what they have done in the last 2 years is outrageous. There are hundreds and hundreds of checkpoints like never before. You never know if you can get out of your village or not. Will you be able to come back? There are tens, dozens and dozens, hundreds of new outposts which take over tens of thousands of dunams of land, violent outposts of the settlers, almost on every hill in the West Bank. You see from today to tomorrow a new tent or two tents, and very soon they take over all the land around them. Their pogroms are daily, really daily. Yesterday I visited a lady in the village of Moriah. She is a grandmother of 8 children, and they had beaten her in her head until she really collapsed and was taken to hospital with bleeding in her brain. I mean, they have no borders, those people. They are not human beings. So this is also happening while the army and the police don't do anything, and many times they even support those pogroms. And the soldiers themselves changed on those 2 years, because part of them served in Gaza, so they brought the spirit of the barbaric deeds in Gaza also to the West Bank, and some of them would like to serve in Gaza, and if they can't serve there, they try to implement the same attitude toward the Palestinians also in the West Bank. In one word, the West Bank became a very, very tough place, much more than ever before. Not to mention the fact that between 150 to 200,000 Palestinians who used to work in Israel cannot enter Israel anymore in the last 2 years, which means that millions don't have any income for 2 years now, nothing. Because every person who went to work in Israel usually took care of a broader family. Now they have no income. So also the economical situation is very, very bad.
إذن إسرائيل عملياً تنفذ نظام فصل عنصري؟ رسمياً تنفذه ولو بأشكال مختلفة بوقت حتى لو طال، لكن الهدف هو إقامة نظام الفصل العنصري في الضفة الغربية.
First of all, the apartheid didn't start with this war. It started much before. Nothing was born on the 7th of October 2023. Things just became much worse and intensified. But the policy is the same policy for over 50 years now, namely dehumanizing the Palestinians, not recognizing any of their rights. Practically no Israeli government perceived the Palestinians as equal human beings like the Jews. No government ever since the occupation started accepted the fact that the Palestinians should gain the very same rights like the Jews, private rights and national rights. There are two peoples here, not one. But unfortunately, Zionism today is Jewish supremacy, and almost everyone in Israel is Zionist. In other words, everyone agrees that the Jewish supremacy should be kept, which means that the Palestinians are second-class human beings, if they are human beings at all, on a daily basis.
طيب باعتبار أنه لك خبرة يعني الآن فيما يحدث في الضفة الغربية، كيف تختار الحكومات الإسرائيلية أماكن توزيع المستوطنات؟ يعني مثلا نلاحظ أنه هذه المستوطنات تتكدس في مناطق في الضفة أكثر من غيرها. يعني في رام الله، في الخليل، في بيت لحم تجمع استيطاني أكثر مما هو مثلا في جنين وفي نابلس. على أي أساس تختار الحكومات الإسرائيلية إقامة هذه المستوطنات؟
First of all, it's not always the government which decides. The settlers are deciding, and the government is either passive or encouraging it. But the settlers have their own plan, and it is namely to make the West Bank unlivable for the Palestinians. That's the grand plan, to see them living one day. This day is very far. But the idea is to try and to push them out. So they do it, first of all, where they are the weakest communities, namely the shepherds communities in South Hebron and in the Jordan Valley. In the last 2 years, they kicked out around 80 communities who couldn't take it anymore, left their lands, left their homes, and just left. And they are continuing. They make, mainly the settlers, they make the life of those shepherds impossible with a lot of violence and fears and stealing and crimes and really make their life, they cannot take it anymore. They take their sheep, they take their families and leave. And the settlers take over. This is not a governmental plan. This is a plan of the settlers, but the government does nothing to stop it. And in many ways, the government also finances it. The government is guarding and protecting the settlers.
أنت أستاذ غدعون وصفت يعني هؤلاء المستوطنين بأنه يعني يمارسون أو حتى صحيفة هآرتس أقصد وصفت وكانت جريئة بأن هؤلاء يمارسون إرهاب ويخشى أن يؤسسوا لدولة تصبح خارجة عن يعني سلطة الدولة. هل هذا ممكن أن يحصل في يوم من الأيام؟
Look, let's call it by its name. They are militias, and they are violent, well-armed militias. Right now, their energy is focused on the Palestinians, on the villages, on the shepherds communities. Wherever they can, they burn cars, they burn fields, they burn olive trees, they beat people and even kill them. But obviously, militias will not stop there. And would the Israelis be more reasonable? They would have started to worry what will be next, because those violent gangsters will not stop there. And they might do the same within Israel against the seculars, against the leftists, against I don't know whom. This is a very dangerous phenomena, but Israelis, most of them have no interest in what's going on in the West Bank. They know very little about it and they don't care at all. And therefore, they might be surprised one day when this monster will turn also against some of us.
أنت وصفت يعني الاستيطان في الضفة الغربية بأنه أكبر مشروع إجرامي في مقال يعني كتبته. بس هل هذا الاستيطان ينفذ وفق يعني معتقد ديني أنه هؤلاء المستوطنون هم مؤمنون أنه هذه يهودا والسامرة ويجب أن تعود يهودا والسامرة وأن الفلسطينيين فيها أغيار غرباء يجب أن يرحلوا ويهجروا؟
So first of all, let's remember that the settlers started under labor governments. So the first sin is the sin of labor, of so-called peace governments who enabled the whole project to start. It's not the Likud and not Netanyahu who started the settlement project. It was labor, the Israeli Zionist left, who enabled all this. Secondly, my main concern is not the settlers. My main concern is the government and the army and the police who enable this criminal phenomena to expand, because they do what they can do. Yes, they are motivated by religious beliefs, very dark ones, very racist ones, by the way. We are the chosen people. There is no room for any other people between the river and the sea and even beyond. They really hate the Arabs in general and the Palestinians in particular. But where is the government? Where is the Israeli mainstream? And therefore I think that we all carry responsibility. We shouldn't just say, oh, those are the extreme settlers. We have to do something about them. No.
أنا يعني من الضفة الغربية شخصيا، وعندما كنت أزور وأتنقل مثلا من جنين إلى نابلس إلى رام الله، عندما كنت أمر مثلا إلى جانب المستوطنين كنت ألاحظ أنه كثير منهم هم يعني قادمون من الولايات المتحدة من خلال اللهجة الإنجليزية الأمريكية. هل هذا يعني صحيح؟ كثير منهم جاءوا من الولايات المتحدة ليستوطنوا في الضفة الغربية؟
No, it's not most of them. In certain areas, there are many ex-American Jews who immigrated to Israel, but I wouldn't say it's the majority. By all means, not. Most of them are made in Israel.
طيب بالنسبة لهذا الفلتان يعني المستوطنين، وهم واضح أنه بلا عقاب يعني ولا يعاقبهم أحد، ورأينا الكثير من الهجمات على الفلسطينيين. طيب الكثير من الدول الأوروبية أو حتى الولايات المتحدة تقول للحكومة الإسرائيلية بضرورة لجم هؤلاء المستوطنين. طيب إذا لماذا تسكت الحكومات الإسرائيلية عنهم وهم يضعون إسرائيل في الكثير من الحرج أمام العالم، إضافة إلى الحرج اللي يعني وجدت إسرائيل نفسها فيه بخصوص الحرب على غزة؟
It's not an embarrassment for this government. This government doesn't care about the world. This government spread the lie that the whole world is in any case anti-Semitic. So why would we care about the world? That any critic of Israel is anti-Semitic, which is obviously a big lie. And above all, they believe in the settlements project. The problem is, as I said, with the passiveness of the silent majority who does nothing and cares nothing about what's going on there. And above all, you know, the world is talking, and Israel learned that talkings are only talkings. The moment the world will take measures, real practical measures, to punish the settlers or to punish the Israelis or to make them accountable for the crimes, then you might see a change. Until now, the world did nothing except of condemnations and beggings from Israel, please stop the settlements. That's not a way to change the policy of Israel. If the American administration would like to stop the settlement project, he should say so and say it with consequences. This never happened until now.
طب ما هنا المفارقة؟ يعني العالم يعترف بدولة فلسطينية، في هذه الحالة أين الدولة الفلسطينية إذا كان الاستيطان هو الذي يزداد ويتفشى على حساب الأراضي التي من المفترض أن تكون عليها دولة فلسطينية؟
So let's be frank. All this business of recognizing Palestine, and I said it many times, is a hollow lip service to show the Western public opinions that here we do something for the Palestinians, here we do something to promote their cause, but in practical terms, it has no meaning. The whole world can recognize the Palestinian state. As long as Israel doesn't recognize it, there is no Palestinian state. As long as Israeli officers and soldiers decide everything in the West Bank, if Mahmoud Abbas will leave Ramallah or not is decided by the Israeli army. If a shepherd will leave his home or not is decided by Israel's government and Israel army. And any international recognition doesn't change this reality. I remember one day a settler was interviewed after one of those recognitions, and the settler said, I opened the window, I don't see any Palestinian state. And that's exactly the reality.
قلت نقطة لافتة أستاذ غدعون، وهي أنه العالم خاصة الدول الغربية الولايات المتحدة إذا أرادت أن توقف هذا الاستيطان فإنها تستطيع. إذن الدول الغربية الولايات المتحدة كأنها من وراء الكواليس موافقة على تهويد الضفة. أين حقوق الفلسطينيين إذن في هذه الحالة؟
This you should ask the Western countries and mainly the governments, because public opinion is quite in a different place now, as you know. Most of the public opinions in Europe and even in the United States and even in the Jewish community, there are big shifts and changes in the public opinions, but the governments are still supporting Israel, and if not supporting, not ready to take any measures against the settlements or against Israel or against the war in Gaza. And the genocide in Gaza stopped because finally there was an American president who decided to use the leverage that he has in his hands and tell Israel, you stop the war now. And Israel had no other choice but to do so. He can use it also for many other important purposes, like stopping the settlements project, but until now he didn't do it. So being passive in this case is being supportive of the settlements, of the crimes, because if you don't take measures, like you did with South Africa, like you did with Russia after invading Crimea, if you don't take measures, it means you support everything that happened in Gaza and everything which happens in the West Bank.
بالتالي سكان الضفة الغربية لك توصيف يعني جميل بخصوصهم، سميتم الضحايا المنسيون، وهو توصيف جميل. بس بكل الأحوال قلت أيضا في مقال لك قبل أيام إن الانفجار في الضفة الغربية بات وشيكا. على أي أسس يعني بنيت هذا التوقع؟ وإذا حصل هذا الانفجار كيف ممكن أن يكون شكله؟
That's a very good question. I'm not sure I have an answer. I just know that what Israel is doing now in the West Bank is a kind of an experiment with human beings. Let's see, like it did for years in Gaza. In Gaza, we took 2.3 million people, put them in a cage and said, let's see for how long can we keep them in a cage without any explosion. And the explosion came, obviously, after 18 years. In the West Bank, it's totally different picture. It's not the same conditions like Gaza. It's not locked yet. Like Gaza, life is much better than in Gaza, obviously. But what we are doing now puts all the Palestinians in the West Bank in an impossible human situation. You cannot go to work. Either you lost your job, and if you keep some job, you cannot get to your job. And if you can get to your job, not always can you get home. You are humiliated on a daily basis by 19-year-old soldiers. Your life is the cheapest product around. Just last week, I described how a soldier killed a 9-year-old child from a distance of 250 meters without any reason. Just shot him, one shot, and killed him. The soldier was obviously not arrested, nothing. I mean, except for it, nobody bothered even to tell the Israelis what their sons are doing there. So the reality must call for a reaction. Now, the Palestinians tried twice, the two uprisings, the two intifadas, which were not successful from their point of view. They lost a lot from the second intifada. And I'm not sure that the next explosion will be like the former one, something organized. But individuals, and we see it already, individuals will feel that they cannot take it anymore. And they might do all kind of desperate actions, which are always directed, or mostly directed, innocent Israelis. And then the whole world says, oh, the terrible, ugly Palestinian terror. But there is a context.
يعني اسمح لي أسأل هذا السؤال، أنت لا ذنب لك فيه يعني، بس من الجيد أنه نفهمه. يعني عندما يرسل الجنود سواء الشباب أو الشابات إلى الضفة الغربية، ما هي صورة الفلسطيني في أذهانهم؟ يعني مثلا أعطي مثال، نفترض جنود اقتحموا بيت، كان من الممكن يعني يقولوا لسكان البيت في جنين في طول كرم مساء الخير، مضطرين أنه نفتش البيت. لكن لماذا يتلذذوا في الإهانات، في يعني التعامل بكل أنواع التعامل السيء مع الفلسطينيين سواء الكبير أو الصغير، واليد والإصبع سهل على الزناد؟ لماذا؟ كيف؟
The truth is that there is no other way to maintain an occupation. There is no other way. For many years, Israeli liberals thought that we can have a liberal occupation. You cannot have an occupation without brutality. You cannot have an occupation without barbarism, because the other people don't want you there. The other people want its rights. The other people wants their freedom. And you impose on them a tyranny. So it cannot be different. Now you speak about the soldiers. We all have been 18 and 19 years old, and we remember how stupid and young we were there. It's not by chance that they take young soldiers. Most of them are brainwashed. Most of them, like many Israelis, are brainwashed to believe that the Palestinians were born to kill, that the Palestinians are not human beings, animals as they call them, that they all want to kill us, demonizing and dehumanizing them. And it's a whole apparatus which tells those soldiers again and again that there are no human beings in front of you. When you shoot, I can tell you in many cases, if the soldiers would have treated dogs like they treat the Palestinians, it would have been a bigger scandal in Israel. If they would have shot dogs like they shoot many times the Palestinians without any reason, it would be a huge scandal in Israel. They get it throughout the media, throughout the education system, and throughout, obviously, the service in the army. They don't see them as human beings. Because if they would have seen them as human beings, they couldn't operate. They couldn't maintain the occupation. They couldn't come in the middle of the night to a house with 10, 12 children sleeping, with dogs and terrible weapons, and wake them up. You can't do it in a tender way. You can do it only if you believe that those children are not like your children. They are something else, and therefore you can implement such a policy. The problem is not their behavior. The problem is, why are they there at all?
لكي أكون منصف، في أيضا الآن تيار معاكس. أنا قبل أيام يوم الجمعة الماضي استضفت شابة في 18 من عمرها، دانيال شولتز، رفضت الخدمة، وكان من المفترض أن تبدأ يوم الأحد، والآن اعتقلت. وقبلها استضفت أيضا شابة في نفس العمر، عينات، وقبلها شاب. الآن بدأنا نلحظ وجود هذا التيار من الشباب الذي يرفض الخدمة ويقول صراحة: أنا لا أخدم في جيش غير أخلاقي يقتل ويبيد الفلسطينيين. هل هذه الظاهرة الآن باتت لافتة في المجتمع الإسرائيلي، أم ما زالت قليلة محصورة يكاد لا يراها المجتمع الإسرائيلي؟
I wish I could tell you that it is a meaningful development. My whole sentiments is with those young people, courageous, devoted, moral, but they are, first of all, very few, and secondly, they are totally delegitimized in Israeli society, and therefore their influence is very, very marginal. I say it with a lot of sorrow. I wish they would have had more influence, but the whole system is delegitimizing them, and above all the Israeli media, which either doesn't cover their stories at all, or if not ignoring them, they would ridiculize them. And I really, as you can feel, I'm hesitating how to react to it.
طيب، يعني أستاذ غدعون، الحرب على غزة استمرت 2 سنين إبادة، الحمد لله أخيرا يعني توقفت. لكن بالنسبة إلى الرئيس الأمريكي والتعاطي مع الموضوع، كأنه يعتقد أن القضية الفلسطينية وحقوق الشعب الفلسطيني هو فقط غزة. نعود إلى موضوع الضفة الغربية، يعني في تركيز على غزة، وأنا أراه مهم وواجب، لأنه كمان تعرضوا إلى إبادة خطيرة، لكن الحديث عن غزة من دون الحديث عن الضفة.
Yes, but Gaza, if the American project in Gaza will succeed, which I have my strong doubts, but I'd be so happy if it will succeed. First of all, it succeeded by stopping the genocide. This must be said. Yesterday, I spoke with a friend in Gaza. I didn't hear him like this for 2 years. He is having now 3 meals, and he told me many times 5 meals a day, because there is food. This guy was starving now for 2 years. And all of a sudden he has fruits and vegetables and meat, and he was so enthusiastic about it. This is obviously not a solution. It's not all about food, obviously. But if the project in Gaza will succeed, we can only hope that the American administration will continue also to the West Bank. I think that the main goal should be now to internationalize both Gaza and the West Bank. We cannot, I mean, the international community cannot go on in leaving the fate of the Palestinian people only in the hands of Israel. This is not moral, not justice, and it will lead to more and more uprisings and wars. Israeli soldiers wouldn't do it.
طيب خصصت غزة يعني في مجموعة مقالاتك اللي عملت منها كتاب، يعني منها مثلا عقاب غزة. لماذا خصصت غزة تحديدا يعني في مجموعة المقالات هذه، وحتى لك يعني قتل غزة، بس عقاب غزة يعني ماذا أردت أن توثق في مجموعة المقالات هذه التي خرجت على شكل كتاب؟
So for the 21st years of my career, I went very often to Gaza. And the truth is that, if I may say so, I really love Gaza and love the people of Gaza. They are different than from the West Bankers. And I'm not an expert to draw the lines, but I really loved being in Gaza. The courage of the people, the devotion, the suffer. They always suffered much more than the West Bankers. But in any case, my heart is in Gaza. And there was this terrible war in Gaza. And Gaza is suffering, as I said again and again, much, much more than the West Bank. And Gaza is in the news. So I try to tell my story with Gaza and my angle with covering Gaza for so many years. First by visiting Gaza, in recent years only from the distance, which is not real journalism. I mean, phone calls and watching Al Jazeera is not enough. But my heart is there, and therefore, and there was also a demand for books about Gaza now. Sure, the West Bank is waiting not only for a book, but for a solution.
هل تشعر بالأمان بين الفلسطينيين؟ يعني سواء كنت في الضفة في غزة، وأنا أعرف يعني بعرفك جدا جيد جدا، بس وأعرف أنك محبوب لدى الفلسطينيين، لكن بشكل عام نظرا للظروف يعني تشعر بالأمان وأنت بين الفلسطينيين؟
Nothing is safe. The fact is that the only time that my car was shot was in 2003 by Israeli soldiers who didn't know who is in the car. But at those times I still drove with a bulletproof car, and only thanks to this I'm still talking to you now. But dangers are everywhere, and most of the Palestinians don't know me, and it is dangerous. But the fact is that I am so many years there, nothing happened to me, does not mean that tomorrow nothing can happen. I have no guarantee, no immunity, because, as I said, most of the Palestinians don't know who I am. And when I drive my car, total Israeli car, nobody knows who is in the car. But many times I'm also a bit scared when things become more tense, when there are violent incidents. I'm scared both by the settlers and also many times by Palestinians. The fact is that usually I go with some Palestinian friends, and then I feel safer among the Palestinians. But I wouldn't like to say that I feel safe everywhere I go. No, there is a certain danger. And as a journalist, you take some risks, sure.
لا، أنا هو ما قصدته عندما تكون بينهم، يعني أصبحت في بيت فلسطيني مع أصدقائك، هذا ما قصدته. بس في مفارقة، إسرائيل التي ترتكب، الحكومة الإسرائيلية والجيش اللي يرتكب كل هذه الانتهاكات بحق الفلسطينيين، الآن تقول أنا أريد أن أحمي الدروز في سوريا لدوافع ودواع إنسانية، تحديدا في السويداء. كيف للمرء يعني أن يقتنع في غزة تذبح وتقتل كما في الضفة، وتقول أريد أن أحمي الدروز في السويداء لدوافع إنسانية؟ ما الغرض من وراء ذلك؟
No, okay, that's a different subject, and it was really almost ridiculous. I mean, all of a sudden, what about the families of the Palestinians who live in Israel? They have families in Gaza. There is almost no family in Israel, inside Israel. The Israeli citizens who are Palestinians, what we call the Israeli Arabs. There is not a single family without family in Gaza. What about their sentiments? They want also to protect their families in Gaza. Does Israel listen to them? It was a cynical step which had to do with all kinds of calculations, including calculations for the elections, because the Jews are participating in the elections, and part of them are even voting for Likud. I won't get too much into it. It was quite marginal, the whole story, but it disturbed me a lot, obviously, because, so many families in Jaffa, in Haifa, in Nazareth, in any Israeli-Palestinian village are sitting at home and worrying about their relatives in Gaza who are killed on a daily basis. They cannot help them. They hardly could send aid to them because Israel prevented it. So it is not so simple. To answer your former question, I just want to mention here one thing, which is always for me very remarkable. As I told you, I am 40 years, at least once a week, in the West Bank and Gaza, and always going to the grassroots, to families of victims. And in those 40 years, they always welcome me. It's a kind of warmth, maybe it's hospitality, but it's not only hospitality, because I go to families who just yesterday lost their son, who just 2 days ago lost their fields, who just 3 days ago were humiliated and beaten in a checkpoint. And they're always so kind. I can almost generalize. And this is very touching.
يعني 50 دقيقة سينتهي، ولكن أخيرا عندما توصف بأنك صوت ضمير وهناك من يصفك بالصحفي البطل، حقيقة كم يعني لك هذا الوصف؟
In the same time, people call me traitor here, yeah, when I'm jogging in the park. I don't like to compliment myself. I don't like to give all kinds of titles to what I do. It is for others, not for me. For me, it has some meaning what I do. I'm very, very proud of what I'm doing, obviously. I'm very proud of really not giving up, even though it's very frustrating many, many times. You know that you go to places that your readers don't want to read about. You tell them stories they don't want to read and don't want to hear. And still I continue. And others should judge me for this. For me, it is a very meaningful mission, and I try to do it as good as I can.
وأخيرا، هل ترى بأنك استطعت أن تغير وتؤثر في الرأي العام الغربي بخصوص فلسطين؟
I'm just a journalist. Journalists cannot change history. I'm doing my best to tell our readers what Israel is doing. This is more or less what I do. I'm calling again and again, for decades, by the way, the international community to take measures to fulfill its moral duty. Look, the Palestinians are totally helpless. There is no one to protect them on the ground. No one. If the settlers come and attack a family in the West Bank, or if the Israeli army comes and bombs a family in Gaza, there is no one to protect them. Nothing. The world has to do this. And there is a moral duty for the international community to get involved. I don't know what I can contribute for this. I'm trying hard. I'm really calling for many years for the international community to put aside the talkings and the condemnations and to move toward real actions and measures to find Israel accountable and to punish those who are behind all those crimes. But by the end of the day, I'm just a columnist in Haaretz, and let's remember the proportions.
على كل حال، خذها مني وثق تماما أنك أثرت، وأنا لي أصحاب من الغرب دائما يذكرون اسمك ويقولون، يعني أكثر من حد قال لي بأنه يعني كنت سبب في تغيير قناعاتهم. على كل حال يعني الأستاذ غدعون ليفي الكاتب الصحفي من تل أبيب، شكرا لك لوجودك معنا في 50 دقيقة.
Thank you for having me.
شكرا. وشكرا لكم على متابعة هذه الحلقة من 50 دقيقة. إلى حلقة أخرى، تحياتي.